we are having a conversation with a good friend of mine, Prasad Wangikar, who cracked job interviews in 10 companies, including Amazon, Uber, Facebook, Microsoft, Affirm, etc. He's a very good friend of mine. He worked with me in a same team. We used to take lunch together during our work days. And during this call, we are going to learn a lot of useful tips on how you write a resume so that you can get an interview call, how you network with a recruiter, and during the interview how you partner with the interviewer to get a success. So Prasad is going to talk about a lot of useful tips that can help you get success in the interviews with this big tech, and he will be sharing his own personal story, how he prepared and how he handled all these interviews and how he was managed to get 10 job offers, which is a remarkable achievement indeed. And this is something that happened in last 2 months only. So it's a fresh experience that he's going to share. Towards the end of this call, he's going to mention some of the useful resources that you can use to get success in the interviews, especially if you are planning to join a big tech like FAANG type of companies. So let's get started. Prasad, thank you very much for spending time for this conversation.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Deval. It's nice to be on your channel.
All right, so we were talking the other day, and you gave me this good news that you are joining a company, you are making your next move, and you told me you cracked uh, 10 interviews. Like you cracked interviews in 10 big companies, including Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, Uber. And at some point, I thought maybe I misheard something. I'm like, how many? You said like 10. It's an achievement actually. So congratulations for that. So why don't you talk about your whole experience? Why did you decide to apply in all these companies? How did you select which company to join? And most importantly, in the time where during pandemic people are thinking that there are less jobs, etc. And here you are cracking 10 job interviews, in big firms. So just talk about your whole experience.
Sure. Thank you, Deval. So let's start with, I am not representing any institution. So whatever I will be saying, this is wholly based on my experience. So we have been in industry for a while now, and, we have been conducting interviews. So we have been on both sides of the table. So I'll share my experience. So the first thing you asked is why 10, or why did I even apply to all these companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let me be very honest with you. I wasn't sure that I might even crack single of them. I wasn't confident enough, because it's been a while. I was happy with my job, and I did not I had to brush up my skills and all those things. So we'll talk about it, how to do these things. But that was one of the reasons that apply to 10 different companies. The second reason is COVID. Because of COVID, it's locked down, so nobody's going into office. All these interviews are virtual, and it's easier to do these interviews when it's virtual. So I actually did in two weeks, I did 10 interviews in a row, and that wouldn't have been possible if it was not locked down. Even going to New York City for 2 weeks continuously, it's tough. So that was one of the reasons that I applied to all these companies. And the third one, and mostly about I wanted to know what they're doing, what technologies they are doing. And it's incredible to meet engineers from all these companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very curious about
Mm-hmm.
their technologies, their projects, their challenges. So I wanted to learn about all those things. And also, it's been a while that I was in my previous job. So
Mm-hmm.
generally, I tend to stay with companies. I'm not I don't switch jobs every after 2 years or 3 years. So I wanted to make uh, a good decision, and I just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to evaluate all my options.
Mm-hmm.
And it's now I don't need the H1B visa sponsorship and all those things. So you have been in the same boat. We know that it's tough
Yes.
to change these jobs and all this. So this time I was not in a rush. and I had time, so I took like almost 3 weeks off from my job, and I did this kind of full time.
Mm,
So yeah, this is the reason that I applied to all these companies. And so the first thing is, even if it is COVID, companies are hiring, and there is a lot of hiring going on.
mm,
And like my company is also hiring, so we'll put that information in the notes. If someone is interested, they can reach out
mm,
to me. Yeah, so that was the first thing. Second thing is, like, even if it's virtual, right? People think that virtual interviews are tough. Like, how do we
mm,
crack virtual interviews? Being
mm,
in a company face to face, that's another thing. We have been
mm,
doing this for years or decades, but
mm,
how the virtual thing is going to work? But now it's been a year, right? Everybody's virtual, and people have learned how to do these things, including the interviews.
mm.
And it's not a different thing that being virtual versus being in office. And this is my
In
personal
fact,
feeling.
in
Yeah,
fact, I think being virtual makes it even easier because
easier.
let's say you are applying for
Exactly.
a company in California, you don't need to fly it, right? You can attend it from home. So actually, the whole pandemic situation helps if you are looking for a job right now, correct?
Exactly, yes, that is true.
Mm,
um, yeah, and you don't have to worry about your commute, how do you get there, and
mm,
all those things. You can just wake up, get ready, and freshen up, and just come in front of your computer and start your interview. So yeah, that's another thing about COVID. And in terms of economy and everything, I think I'm not an economist or expert in that sense,
mm,
but
mm,
I feel that it's recovery, and
mm.
good things are happening.
All right, so we just discussed, I think, some of the myths, right? Myths about job. That first of all, people think there are not enough job because of pandemic. That is wrong, especially IT. If you're in, let's say, data science, some Python backend type of role, there are in fact more jobs. Then another myth was virtual interview is harder. It's not actually; it's easy. And
Right.
then you want to talk about few other myths. I heard that so when you were applying, right? Let's say Amazon, Facebook, I think they give you a good understanding of the interview process, right? They in the prior to the interview, uh, do they
Yes.
even tell you who is going to interview you or what kind of question they will be asking?
Yeah, it depends on the company, but the general theme is they want you to succeed. So they want
Hmm.
to hire good people, and it all depends on, like, how you prepare for these interviews. So
Hmm.
even if you're smart and you just go on to these interviews, so mostly you will not be able to crack it. So there is
Hmm.
a formula to how to crack these things, and
Hmm.
these companies, they know that you need to prepare, and
Hmm.
they help you prepare.
Hmm.
In fact, almost like every company, they send you material. They send you
Hmm.
their mock interviews with their own engineers, like how they conduct interviews. For example, like in Facebook, there are like engineers talking to each other, like mock interview. One engineer is interviewing another engineer, and
Also, they
they
send you the video.
exactly, they send you the video, they send you the websites, and we will talk about, like, the entire process, and the tools that you can use. But the point I'm trying to make here is they want you to succeed, and they will
Hmm.
make sure you have all the information that you need to prepare for these interviews. And there's nothing like it's not negative that this guy has prepared for this interview, or this guy has done like 500 lead code problems, so he'll crack this interview. It's not going to go against you, it will go like with you. So that's one important thing to note. In fact, I was also not thinking the same way, that these companies are not going to give you like the exact problem they're going to ask, but they will tell you what kind of problems they ask, and with some examples you can prepare and make sure you can solve those problems, and go for the interview.
Got it, got it. Now, see, all this process starts with your resume. So, do you want to give any resume tips or how do you work on LinkedIn profile so that you can at least get interview calls in these companies?
Yeah, so that is actually the most crucial step, I would say, because that's how you get attention of the recruiters in these big tech companies. So these big tech companies, they have like, big teams of like recruiters,
Mm.
spanning through LinkedIn and, looking at the resume and all those things. So there are like, definitely some professional helps, or some tools that we will discuss later that, these tools, they can help you. But I'll give you a few tips.
Mhm.
So keep your LinkedIn profile current, and make sure, like even on LinkedIn, there are things that you can give some tests about like your skills, like Python, Java, and that badge comes up, and if somebody's searching like these recruiters, they can find you based on these technologies that you have worked on. That's
Oh,
one
so
thing. And
these tests are conducted by LinkedIn platform itself.
LinkedIn, yes, yes, and
Okay.
you can
And if
appear
you,
in the search.
I see. So if you pass it, you get a badge, and then you catch attention of recruiters. Okay. So I did not know about this. So that's a good tip. Anyone looking for job, uh, complete those tests. And are these tests free or they have to pay?
Yeah, they're free. They're offered by LinkedIn because it helps LinkedIn and it helps the recruiters to find people.
Very good. Okay.
And the second tip I would give is, generally, like these
Mm,
recruiters, they keep reaching you out. So even if you're not looking, just be kind enough to reply to them, so that
mm,
you have this conversation open. So I
mm,
remember, like 2-3 years back, Google recruiter reached out to me and said, like, I'm working with people who are trying to make a move in 2 years.
mm.
And, I'm trying to help them. So it's not like, if a recruiter reaches out to you, don't just shut it off. Just keep it open,
Wow.
even if you're not like, looking for a job right away. And
2 years. Wow. So they reach out to you in 2 years advance. They prepare you.
exactly, exactly.
Amazing.
And so yeah, recruiter is your best friend in the
Mm,
entire process. And I can tell you that I have developed kind of, it's not like permanent, but the personal relationship with like recruiters in all these companies. So
mm.
even if, let's say, I'm not going to one company, I can talk to that recruiter and ask him, I'm thinking about A and B, and can you help me here? And these recruiters are kind enough, they help you out in that sense. And these recruiters, they also move, right? So you don't know whether that recruiter will come to your company. And that actually has happened with me, that I got pinged by a recruiter, and he said, like, now I'm with you. We were talking about like a different company a few years back, and now let's talk about this one. So yeah, these things happen. And recruiters, actually, they get paid when you get hired. So
Right.
it's in their best interest that you crack the interview and you go in.
Got it.
So
And
that's
I think you mentioned about resume already. Only one page resume. Even if you have 10 years of
yes,
experience, one page resume, okay?
yeah,
Don't write any BS. Like your resume, okay, your name, then immediately start with your projects. I've seen like person has like 10 years of experience and he would be discussing his degree. After 10 years, your degree doesn't matter. So
right,
don't even mention your degree, I would say. Just say, okay, here's my experience. Let's say you work with 5 companies, 2-3 line of description, your major skill set. If you have done any open source contribution, any major achievement, mention that. Done. One page.
right,
Don't go beyond one page.
exactly. And I've seen people having 30 years of experience, but their resume is like just one page. And even with that one page, right? So you should highlight one single project or achievement that you are really proud of. And
Hmm.
there are ways you can just put that thing up there before your the entire list of your achievements. And for degree, I as you mentioned, like you don't need to mention, but I think it's okay to mention the degree,
Hmm.
especially if you're proud of it. So for example, I have an MBA degree. And when I go to interviews, like I always get this question: so you have an MBA, do you really want to be an engineer, or you want to go on a different track? But regardless, I'm proud of my degree. I learned a lot, and so I
Hmm.
put it there on my resume. It's at the bottom left corner, but it's there.
Got it.
So just put everything that you're proud of, not your like personal achievements, but
Hmm.
professional, what they're looking for. And one page makes sense because nobody has like time to read several pages of your resume. The recruiter just looks at it. If it flashes, then they keep reading. Otherwise they'll just go to the next one. They get like thousands of resumes every day. So
Got
that's
it.
really important.
So now let's say you build a solid resume. You got interview call from Amazon, Facebook. Now let's talk about how their interview process is. Let's talk about your personal experience. If you're comfortable, you can discuss some of the questions that were asked in your interviews. You can discuss some of that and give our viewers an idea on how was your interview process, and in your opinion, what are some of the guidelines people can follow to be successful in these interviews?
Sure, sure, sure. I'll not be, discussing any particular question, but, I
Mm.
can give you some examples or, the questions that sometimes I ask in an interview.
Got it,
So
got it.
we
And
we
and
will,
and sorry, like we'll just tell the viewers that these companies make you write an NDA, and because of that, Prasad is not able to discuss the exact question that were asked, but he will give you good overall understanding.
yes, and I will, give you some resources where you can find the actual questions asked by these companies.
Mm,
And there is, some part of like truth to that. For
mm,
example, in lead code, there are almost like 2000 problems. Maybe it's just like, database of like all the interview questions, and there you can find questions asked by a particular company. So every
mm.
question comes in, and we can see how many times this has been asked in these companies. So you can find these questions. But let's just start with the process. Like, now a recruiter reaches out to you, your resume flashes, and a recruiter says, okay, let's go and do this. So recruiters, first of all, they're not going to rush you. They're not going to say
Mm.
like, do interview next week, or in a few weeks. They'll give you ample amount of time. They will be reasonable, and they'll give you resources to prepare. So there are basically three kinds of interview questions, or three types of interviews. Some companies, they kind of like mix these together. We'll get to that in a bit, but let me just give you three basic types of interview questions. The first one is really important: coding. So
Mm,
coding, they'll give you a problem, something like as simple as like reverse a linked list,
mm, mm.
and you will have to code it, make sure it runs, and you need to explain how you're thinking about it. So we'll get to that in a bit, but let's just list down all the types. The second type is the system design. System design is where it's like more vague answer. So there's no like
Mm.
right or wrong answer. I mean, there is no single right answer. There are obviously wrong answers, but the questions are pretty much wide open. Like, design a Twitter, design like Facebook news feed, design Mint or Venmo, something like that. And then you will have to dig deeper into the problem, and show your experience. What will you be
Now,
using if you want to do that?
now you applied as a senior software engineer, right? You have many years of software engineer experience. So do you think, I mean, do you have any knowledge, even if the fresher is applying, if fresher is applied, do they go into system design too much or not that much?
Yes, there is a difference. So we'll get to that, get to the levels after this. And the third
Okay.
type is the behavioral question, like
Hmm.
how do you show leadership? How did you handle a particular situation? So they
Hmm.
ask you, for example, Amazon has these 14 leadership principles. So they want to evaluate you against those. So if you're interviewing with Amazon, you need to study all these 14 principles, and be prepared with examples like where you have shown this, right? So these three types of interviews are generally I've seen like even a code review type of interview. So they will show you like code repository, and there are like hundreds of problems, and you have to go through as if you are reviewing a pull request. So if you're
Oh.
applying for a senior software engineer, that was actually really fun. And I loved it because there was like too many problems, and you just need to just keep saying that this is wrong, and why this is wrong. How would you comment on a PR?
It's
So
it's fun to find problems in other people's code, right?
yes, yes. And especially knowing that there are problems and you're supposed to find them, and they just kind of judge you based on like how many problems you found. And it was really fun. But now let's talk
So
about the levels.
your whole round is code. Your whole round is the code review, or just you have
Yes,
one
yes.
hour interview?
So
Oh,
one hour code review. So you
1 hour
just
code review. Wow.
yes. So they will give you a link. You just open that link, share your screen, and you go like, one at a time, one file at a time, and you see show the problems. You're not like writing it. You're just telling the problems, and interviewer
Mm.
is noting. So yeah,
Mm.
that was fun. So let's talk about the levels. So these companies, they have different levels for individual contributors. So there's another myth that if you want to grow
Mm.
in terms of like your responsibility or your compensation, you need to be on management track. So that was kind of in financial or banks or fintech industry, right? But that's not true in all these tech companies. They have like well defined career path for ICs. And there are levels, like different companies, they have different levels, but generally is like software engineer, senior software engineer, then staff software engineer, senior staff, principal. Every company has it structured differently, but and they don't put you in a particular level just because of your number of experience, number of
Mm.
years of experience. They
Mm.
need to see that kind of experience in you. So based on like what level you're applying for, or what level they're considering you for, there will be less coding interviews, but more system design and behavioral interviews as you go up. So for a college graduate, there some companies even may not have system design at all. Some
Mm.
companies may will have just like one system design and behavioral interview just to see how do you think about all these things. But coding is important, and for coding, it's not like which level you are interviewing at. Coding is same for all the levels. So no
Mm.
matter
Mm.
like you are applying for principal software engineer, which is at kind of director and above level, you still have to pass this coding interview. And like no matter if you are doing very well on system design and behavioral, if you don't pass coding, it's a big no. So coding is
So
really important.
coding is must, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you are working in some company where you are just doing people management, then you should be a little bit concerned. You need to be hands on.
Yeah. And I have heard like I've never like been in interview for engineering managers. Even engineering managers, they have to do some kind of coding interviews
Hmm.
in these companies.
All right, great. So I think we talked about the structure, right? The coding interview, system design, behavioral. Um, so then comes, let's say you go through all this, and you talked about. Can you talk about some of the resources? I think lit code is one. Uh,
Yes. So let's dive a little bit deep into all these types of interviews and how do you prepare for those.
okay.
So let's start with coding, and
Hmm. Hmm.
let's think like what interviewer is expecting or what they are looking for, right? So lead code is like a good resource, right? You have like the big database of like problems you can go practice there. But just doing lead code is not going to help you.
Hmm.
I'll tell you the reason. The interviewer is not only just looking for your coding skills or can you do it. It's basically a two-way conversation. So they want to know your problem solving skills. They want to know your communication. How do you communicate your thoughts? And they want to know your coding fluency. How do you test these things?
Hmm.
How good you are at asking clarifying questions. They are
Hmm.
looking for all these signals. And it's like even if you not completely solve a problem, it's okay, because these are hard problems. So I have been asked like from medium to hard questions, and not every time I was able to finish coding, but still I got the green signal or the offer. So it's not like just like solving the problem or making sure everything is right, because when you do like a lot of lead code, you tend to have like tendency to just jump into the problem, start coding, finish it, test it, and move on. But that's not how it's done in the real interview. And the interviewers, they're really friendly. We need to use them. It's never like you against
Hmm.
them.
Hmm.
It's basically you are working with your colleague and you're solving your problem
Hmm.
together. And I'll give you like, my honest opinion. So if you ask me to solve a very hard lead code problem by myself, I may
Huh.
not be able to do it, but I can do it with an interviewer. That's interesting,
With their
right?
help.
With
Yeah,
their
this,
help, they're there to help you, and they will give you hints, they will correct you if you're going on the wrong track, so you have to use it. So it's
I
not
think you this is a very good point that you mentioned, Prasad, because when people go into interview, they are like, okay, me against you. This guy is trying to give me a hard time, but it's not like that. You have to always think aloud, and then, as you mentioned, just use their help.
exactly, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't practice. So
Hmm.
first of all, like generally, let's say let's take an example, like Facebook. They are very open about like their interviews. In 45
Hmm.
minutes they're going to ask you two like kind of medium questions,
Hmm.
and you have to ask questions. You have to
Hmm.
clarify what the problem is, then you have to think aloud. I mean, whatever you're thinking, you need to keep communicating. You
Hmm.
cannot just be quiet and think about it. That's one of the interview criteria. They tick mark it, like
Hmm.
did the candidate was the candidate silent for about a minute.
Hmm.
So you should not stop talking, keep talking while you're thinking. And
Hmm.
so you have this probably 15 to 20 minutes to solve one problem. So in that you have to first ask clarifying questions, then do the problem solving, and explain how you are going to solve it. And then when the interviewer is okay, then you have to start coding.
Hmm.
So basically for coding you just have probably 5 to 10 minutes. So you need to be proficient in solving these problems within that time. And
Hmm.
when you are confident that you can solve a medium problem in like 10 minutes or 15 minutes, then only it makes sense. Otherwise what happens is, like, if I'm not confident that I will be able to code a problem in 15 minutes, I
Hmm.
tend to kind of cut short the other time, that
Hmm.
asking clarifying questions, or communicating, or problem solving. So my goal would be, just let's just get to the coding and
Hmm.
finish it.
Hmm.
So but if you practice well, and if you're confident enough that if you know how to solve this problem, you can code it in 5 to 10 minutes, then it gives you like a boost in your confidence, that you don't have to rush.
Hmm.
Like I have experience, like in some of those interviews, right? The interviewer was thinking like, is this guy gonna code? Is he even? He just keeps talking. So sometimes
Hmm.
I was stopped and asked to, let's start coding. But when I
Hmm.
started coding, I was like, be done in like 5 or 10 minutes. So that's how.
Hmm.
And they're there to help you, as I said. So
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
will try to manage your time as well. But practice is important. So you need to be able to solve these problems. So that for that lead code is very good.
Hmm.
And the second thing I would suggest is, even for coding, do some mock interviews.
Hmm.
There are various websites, they offer mock interviews, like interviewing.io. Interview Kickstart has a good they call it like master class of interviewing. They can provide you like help, starting from the resume, LinkedIn, to all the way to offer negotiation. And that's a good resource. If you have time and money, that's definitely worth it. So yeah, so these are the things they're looking in the coding
So
interview.
on interviewing.io and I think interview kickstart, I think you can pay money and get the mock interview schedule, right? So you pay some money and some Google, some engineer
The
who has
real engineers, yeah.
real engineer will be taking that interview. So those mock interviews are super useful.
Yeah, those are super useful.
Cool. So we are discussing the coding round, right? Like, do you want to give some insights on how to crack system design interviews?
Yeah, sure. So system design is kind of a very different than coding.
Hmm.
So if you think about it, like in a like in terms of lead code, right? So in lead code you have been given like a small problem to code, and
Hmm.
your problem works right there. But system design is on a larger scale, on a
Hmm.
like design a Twitter. So you
Hmm.
can have a simple lead code, let's say publish subscribe thing, to as a coding problem. But here you are talking about like bigger scale.
Hmm.
And this is where your experience comes into play. This is where they're going to make a leveling decision on you, like, at
Hmm.
what level you will be hired.
Hmm.
Right, so this is important. uh, so to prepare for this, there are, like, various resources. As I said, like, you can do mock interviews, you can do these classes, but there's a page on the GitHub. We'll put this link in the resources, but that's the system design primer. So
Hmm.
they have, like, kind of course, like how to prepare for all these interviews. There are some
Hmm.
interesting example questions and answers, but this is, I would say, 70-30, or 80-20 talking. So it's not
Hmm.
like, just you keep talking
Hmm.
about, like, how you want to do it, but you need to involve the interviewer. And most important thing is, here also you need to ask clarifying questions.
Hmm. Hmm.
Questions
Hmm.
like, how many users we are designing this for, what are the constraints,
Hmm.
do we want, like, the system consistent, or eventual consistent. So
Hmm.
are we designing it for availability or consistency? What are the
Hmm.
network throughputs, and what are the
Hmm.
bottlenecks?
Hmm.
How the system will perform? And that's where your experience comes into picture. So this system design and behavioral, you cannot fake your experience. So they'll
Hmm.
really catch you right there. So you need to have that experience, and once you have that experience, you need to prepare how to present it. So in this simple problem, right, so that somebody could be, like, very much like, well versed into database technologies. So if you are, then drive that conversation towards it. Like, if you are a distributed systems guy, like how to shard this system, how to scale it, how to put this system into, like, different data centers, different regions, and how are you going to communicate, then you have to drive it on that direction. So it really depends on your experience, but again, practice is important. Doing some mock interviews and getting good feedback is important. So this is
There
how
is there is another resource I would like to mention. There is an Uber engineer. His name is Gaurav Sen. He's running a YouTube channel where he talks about, he has videos on like how you design WhatsApp, how do you design Facebook, distributed caching. He has so many good videos on design, system design. So I would suggest checking out his channel.
yeah, it's a good
Cool.
channel.
Yep. Good. So now we discussed system design. Do you have any tips on the third round of interview, which is a behavioral round?
Yeah, that's again, very interesting type of interview. So one single tip: be honest. So the
Hmm.
behavioral round is basically thinking about, like, how you have solved a particular situation in the past. How did you deal with conflict? How did you do, like, did you ever had conflict with your manager, with your colleague, and how did
Hmm.
you resolve these situations? So
Hmm.
it's, I would say, it's like going for a date, right? So you don't, like, overcommit yourself that I did this, did that, then you will
Hmm.
be in trouble. So
Hmm.
first of all, be honest, and
Hmm.
look for every company has their principles, and just go through their website, go through this job description, what they're looking for, and think about, like, do you have that experience? Can you bring some of the examples from your past, that you have done these things? And it's always a good idea to just list down these examples, and start talking about these examples. And this is also, like, very open conversation. um,
Hmm.
it's never, again, you versus the interviewer. So they are looking for some signals, some things that you have done in the past. So just, your job is to provide those things.
Hmm.
And there's, you cannot frame things like, you cannot just create situation in the past and tell about it, because
Hmm.
they are good at spotting these things, and they will ask clarifying questions, follow-up questions. And that's where this thing comes. But these interviews, like, they decide what level you're going to go in. So
Hmm.
if you have shown like leadership qualities, and how did you deal with conflict, and when
Hmm.
there was like requirement was not clear, and Amazon has these 14 leadership principles. You can look online, and they actually, if you're interviewing with Amazon, they will
Hmm.
give you these resource that look for these. And I think Amazon is the best company to for behavioral interviews, because even in coding rounds they
Hmm.
start with a behavioral question. So
Hmm.
how it works is they form a team, like interviewers, these 5 or 6 people, they're going to interview you,
Hmm.
and they divide these 14 leadership principles amongst themselves, and
Hmm.
each person will judge you on at least one or two leadership principles,
Hmm.
and they're very upfront about it. My experience with them was like awesome, right?
Hmm.
So they even had prep calls with real engineers, where real engineer would give me tips, just like we are doing right now. So yeah, so
Oh, you
these
had
are,
a before the interview, you had a call, prep call with them?
yes, I had a
That
prep
is
call with them.
amazing.
Yeah,
Very good, very good. So that shows that they really want you to succeed
exactly.
in the interview. They will not be asking you tricky questions. They don't want to trick you.
Never, never.
And they really prepare you well. So that shows that cracking interviews in these big companies is not as hard as people think it is. And the fact is they're hiring so many people, right? These companies, like for example, Amazon, although it's more than 20-year old, they're still growing at a faster pace. So they want to hire more and more people. So of course, the chances of getting selected in these companies will be high if you prepare well. If you
Yes.
keep all these points which Prasad discussed here in this call. Now, for a person like you, let's say you have 10 job offers in hand, right? It becomes like if I had 10 job offers, it becomes so hard to make a right decision, like which company should I join? So do you want to talk about how do you make that selection? And also when the first step when you're applying for the company, I think you should be mindful. You should not be looking at just the money. So even this begins very early, like which company you should apply for. So can you give some tips based on your experience?
Yeah, yeah. So for this also there are various resources. So let's just start with the money, right? So you need to know, like what your expectation is, and what these companies are offering at that particular level. So for
Hmm.
that, levels.fyi is the website that's the best resource you can find. So there
Hmm.
you can see, like what are the range, or what are the real actual offers made by these companies. This is obviously like crowdsourced, but there is some truth to it, so it's not like completely off the track. So that's one thing, right? So again, and money is not important. So it's a good problem to have, but it was a big problem, and I got stressed because of like this, like having to choose one of this, because these were like some of these were my like dream companies I've ever dreamed about, like going to Facebook, Amazon, Uber, for that matter. But
Obviously, dude, yeah, you have offer from Amazon, Facebook, Uber, Microsoft. These are the four, I
yes.
think, big companies, and then six companies are also like they're equally good. It becomes really difficult, right? It must have taken like a lot of thinking to make a right decision.
Yes, yes, yes. And I would say, it's not about the company, it's about the job. So think about like, what you will be doing. That
Hmm.
is, really important. And some companies, like Facebook, they kind of have this boot camp where, once you're hired, for about like, 6 to 8 weeks, go to different teams for a week. So
Hmm.
you work in that team for a week, and move on. So after this end of this cycle, you decide, like which team to pick. That is an awesome thing, right?
Wow.
But there are very interesting projects, and everybody is like working for solving some kind of problems that have never been solved, or these problems were non-existent like few years back. So this is really hard problem to solve, but like which company to choose. But money is not just the factor. So there is culture, so that you can judge in the entire interview process, starting with like recruiter conversation, and all
Hmm.
these interviews. It's not like just one way. Company is not interviewing you, but you also kind of like getting
Obviously.
a sense of like, how the culture is, and how these people, how smart they are, how friendly they are, how welcoming they are. So all these things, they really matter, apart from the money. It's not just like, the number, you get the best number, you sort all these offers and you pick the best. That's not the right strategy. So I would say, the culture, the people is really important, the projects that you will be working on. And another thing is, the location. So if you prefer to stay in West Coast versus East Coast, all the like Amazon, Facebook, they were like open to location. They were like, if you want to go to West Coast, talk to the West Coast team, and we will find your position there. But apart from that, even Facebook has 100% remote, so they can even offer you that. And my company, right, Affirm. So I am working like 100% remote, and the culture was very welcoming. The problems that we are trying to solve, they're
So
very interesting. So
Affirm
that's,
is based in, I think, San Francisco, and you're working from New Jersey from your home.
yes,
That's, see, this is the beautiful thing, now, because previously when I was thinking, okay, maybe I should join this company, but then like I don't want to move to
exactly.
West Coast. But now I think, especially after pandemic, that barrier is gone. Many companies are offering full remote work from home, as you say, like Facebook is offering that. Do you know about any other companies who are like offering this full-time remote? I don't think Amazon is offering that, right?
Not yet.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that was like, a deciding factor for me as well.
Hmm.
But in general, like, they are becoming like more and more flexible. So before pandemic, right? So I never thought about this, that I would be working from home like 100%, and do all these cool things.
Hmm.
So this is, people are changing, like, they're everybody's getting used to this situation, like,
Hmm.
onboarding, interviewing, and contributing. It is possible, while doing it remote. So things are changing. So, and that's the best thing that pandemic has given to us.
All right. So you in the end made a decision to join a firm. So you want to talk about quickly like what factor? I think you already mentioned, right? Like the money is definitely a factor, but it's not very important. But you look at, I think, culture, technology, you get a vibe of, what kind of people you're going to work with, right? And
Exactly.
based on that, I think you made a decision to join this
Yeah.
company, a firm.
S-
You want to talk a little bit about your company? You said like your company is also hiring. So you want to discuss anything
Yes,
around
yes,
that?
yes. So I'll talk about it. So when I interviewed with Affirm, everybody I met is like, super smart. And being smart is one thing, and being friendly is another thing. So they were smart and friendly and supportive since the beginning, and it's like, very welcoming culture. So
Mm,
you don't always get your offer letter signed by the founder and CEO,
mm,
but in this case it was the case. And I wanted to go for like, a perfect size. So
mm,
startups is like a little bit too much for me, because you never know when the equity part is going to realize. And even
mm,
though there are like challenging problems, and you get to wear different kinds of hats, on the other end, it's like, Facebook and Amazon, everything is established. There are still a lot of problems to be solved, but a firm was kind of perfectly right sized for me. So they
mm,
went IPO'd. So they're public now, so it's not like, just a startup, but still we are in a growth phase. We are
mm,
growing extremely at a high rate, and that's
mm.
the reason we are hiring. So I'll put my email ID into the comment section, so whoever is interested, they can reach out to me, and we can talk about it.
And these, by the way, this just for the viewers, many of the viewers are from India, but these job offers, I think they are in US, correct?
Yes, they are in
Okay.
US.
So if you are physically present in US, then only bother Prasad. Otherwise, we'll let you know, if they have, if there are, they have locations in the other world and if they are hiring in the other part of the world. But for now, what Prasad is referring to is the jobs in US. Only people who are physically present in US should reach out to him. And Prasad, is it okay if I put your LinkedIn profile as well in the video description?
Yeah, sure, we can.
Cool. All right. So we'll put that. So Prasad, I think we pretty much covered everything, right? Like, do you have any other final thoughts?
Yeah, so let me just go through the resources that we talked about. Let's revise them and make sure like the viewers get what to get out of like these different sites. So Lead Code, it's basically a big database of like interview coding problems. They also have, I think, system design. I'm not too sure, but yeah, that's where you practice coding. Um, you need to be proficient in coding. You need to be fast enough to solve a problem once you know how to solve it. So that's Lead Code is there for. Interview Kickstart, as I said, it's a extremely useful program. They have like 2 months of classes and they have support periods, so you can do that. um, uh, Third thing is the interviewing.io, where you can schedule the interviews with like real people, and they have like everything specialized. For example, Amazon has a little bit different behavioral interview, right? So you can find that kind of interview there. You can find system design. You can specialize, like you can find specialized interviews in there. There is another site called Geeks for Geeks. That is also a useful site. There are a lot of problems. Sometimes there are different than the Lead Code problems. They also have, I guess, their classes about like getting up to speed onto algorithms and coding. So you can use that. Glassdoor, obviously, for just in general the companies and interview process. You can find reviews. You can find the actual questions that have been asked. And the lastly, levels.fyi. That is where you find the different levels and the salaries, or the compensation these companies are offering. Yeah, that's pretty much of it.
All right, and since you mentioned levels.fyi, I just want to highlight to the viewers that if you are in US, let's say living in East Coast or West Coast, as a senior software engineer, it's not a big deal to make a $400,000 a year. Prasad, do you agree?
Yes, and you can just go to levels.fyi and check for yourself. These numbers are
Yes,
real.
these numbers are real, friends. I shared Prasad levels.fyi in one of my videos, and someone was saying, "Oh, these are fake numbers. It can't be that high." But guys, we are in industry. We have people. We have real people, friends working in these companies. As a senior software engineer, let's say if you have 6 7 years of experience, making $400,000 is not like an exception. There are many people who make that kind of money. In fact, let's say if you're a machine learning engineer in Google, Facebook, you can make $800,000 or even $1 million a year. Okay, so these are all real numbers. Levels.fyi, these are real numbers. It's not like fake. Someone is not putting fake numbers here. So this shows the kind of opportunities you have in terms of earning money or in terms of building career, solving cool problems. So go check it out. All the resources are available in the video description below. Prasad, again, thank you very much for this useful conversation. I hope that all the viewers are going to learn a lot from your talk today.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. And just one thing I wanted to correct is like you said, these numbers are not fake on levels.fyi. We do not have that authority to say they're not fake. There might be some fake numbers, but there is some truth to it. So if you take average, right, the outliers, they go away, right? You can find like if somebody is saying I earn like $15 million a year, that's not
That's the
true.
outline.
But
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, exactly.
so but you can trust these numbers. And by the way, the levels.fi, they have this service which they call like a negotiation service. So you can
Hmm.
probably use that also. So I've seen friends use that also. So it's worth spending a few hundred dollars on and get help from them to how to negotiate and
Wow, they teach you how to
writing emails.
negotiate. Wow,
Yes.
amazing. This is amazing.
So
Okay,
everything is there. You just need to know all these resources and you need some time to prepare, and you go and do it.
perfect, perfect. All right, thanks. I will end this now. Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, bye.